8:36 the time now. A judge has denied California's request to immediately block President Trump from using Marines in the National Guard and immigration enforcement there. The motion, filed in San Francisco's federal court, asked the court to issue an order barring the National Guard and Marines from law enforcement activity beyond the immediate vicinity of federal property.
The filing says California military leaders have been informed that troops will soon begin supporting immigration operations, including securing perimeters around where raids are taking place. It's still not clear if the change in mission had already begun. Arguments on the issue are now set for this Thursday.
Our Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes joining us to talk about this case and what we can expect. So the judge saying no to the emergency part, but saying no, we're going to hear this case. What does that signify to you, Khalif?
It signifies that this is a good judge that you want hearing a case, not someone that's attempting to rush to judgment, attempting to move fast. No, I would say whatever harm that would be done between Tuesday and Thursday can be fixed by Thursday. Irreparable harm, likely successful in the marriage, this public balance and the balancing of the equities, right? Those are the things that you'll want to have, but you want an opportunity for both sides to submit briefs, and that's what the judge said. Go ahead and give me your briefs on why they shouldn't be allowed to do this. President Trump and the administration, give me your briefs on why you should be allowed to do this, and then I'll be able to make a thorough, well-balanced, thoughtful analysis of the situation as opposed to a quick rush to judgment. That emergency portion is typically held for when it's something where if I don't grant this injunction, if I don't grant this temporary restraining order at this moment right now, something that I can't roll back would happen beyond irreparable harm, something where it's like life-threatening, endangering. And so in this situation, this is where you would want to give an opportunity for both sides to be heard and have a full-fledged hearing on it, as the judgment indicated.
Khalif, I'm sure other governors in other states will be watching this case as well, but if you're on the governor's legal team, are there certain ways that you have to prove that this deployment without the state's approval was illegal, overextending the executive order powers, or what do you have to prove?
100%. I mean, first of all, the statute that the president used was Title 10, Section 12460, which indicates that he can deploy in or grab National Guard troops without the governor's consent or request, if there is some type of rebellion. And so that would be the first thing that you would tackle. The other portion I would tackle is what capacity are you able to deploy non-National Guard troops, so the Marines that are also there. Well, in that capacity, they're there just to protect federal buildings. They're not supposed to be patrolling, not supposed to be assisting. And so that capacity would also be something that I would want to ensure that the judge has given clear guidance and directive, as Congress has already given, to what these folks are supposed to be able to do. They're not there to be policing. They are there to protect the building, federal property. That's the statute that authorizes them to be able to be used here in this country. That's really the two arguments that I would make. I saw what he said the other day, that the president and he said, are able to send troops anywhere in the country. And I would agree with folks and troops that are not a part of the National Guard. But if they are a part of the National Guard and they are non-active duty members, it's typical that the governor would call unless in times of rebellion. I mean, I would just point to the clear language of the statute and allow a judge to make a determination based on that.
And again, the last time we saw this was back in the 60s when Lyndon Johnson sent the National Guard into Selma. When you look at this and the precedent it could set, because if this, say, it doesn't go the Trump administration's way, an appeal is coming. What type of precedent could this set?
I mean, I'm not sure if it'll set a major precedent. I think the lower court will after balancing the equities, looking at the whole standards, that irreparable harm and things in this case, typically when I'm asking for an injunction, I would say that irreparable harm is going to be the one that makes a determination. Mm-hmm. But I think in this situation, it will be that public policy and that balancing of the equities, because they drafted this statute and these rules to be exactly like this, where you want the president not to be able to overstep the governor's authority, and you want to have that separation of this federal and state authority. The court will rule in that favor. As you move forward, having no crystal ball, I think a court of appeals in that same region would do the same. But if this ultimately made its way to the Supreme Court, I wouldn't be able to tell you, because typically you would, if this was non-President Trump administration, sure, the bench that we have, the majority that it sit, would rule in favor of a state in this situation. However, in this current rendition, in this current scenario set of facts, I don't think that they would.
Quickly, Khalif, almost out of time. We know that we're having protests in North Carolina this coming weekend. They've already publicized it. If you're a protest organizer or future participant, What do I need to know if I'm organizing a rally, go into a rally, just to make sure my legal awareness is ready so I'm not caught off guard?
A couple things. You want to for sure make sure that you're compliant. I mean, if there's a plant protest, right, a plant rally, then you can go through the steps and stages that a state, local municipality will require you to do. But if it's some unplanned one, then obviously you want to take no parts in that, because then you can subject yourself to being arrested. Those plant ones, those ones where you have went through the time, place, and manner restrictions that a state or local municipality can place on you, just be compliant to what they're asking. Don't be disruptive. Don't block traffic. Don't do things that would have subject yourself to arrest, or then you'll be hiring someone like me to try to get you out of there.
Again, our Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes breaking that down for us. Khalif, thank you.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.